Okay.
Get the
Thank God. Yeah.
Aha.
It's 7 o'clock. Yeah. So,
Should I start?
yes, please.
All right. Well, good evening. Welcome, everybody. We've got a super full moon. We've got a comet and all this beautiful setting for our webinar tonight. I think it's the perfect setting. So the topic is depth hypnosis, a rapid path to transformation. And we're so happy to have Dr. Isa Gucciardi with us, who comes to us from California. She developed groundbreaking spiritual counseling model. It combines hypnotherapy, Buddhist psychology, shamanism, energy medicine, altered states, and regression therapy. So it's right up our alley. She's an international lecturer and author of 2 best-selling books that I'd like to mention, Coming to Peace and The New Return to the Great Mother. And I believe she's going to tell us tonight about the next book on this topic that will be coming out if it's not out already. And so we're just so happy to have her. So Isa, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Excuse me. I was just telling Vandana that I spent about 10 years commuting back and forth between Rhode Island and California. I had quite a wonderful group of students there that I taught during that time. And I have so many wonderful memories of the woods there and the plants and the beautiful, the tidal marshes and the rivers. And, it's just, there's a really magical aspect to Rhode Island. And it was today when I was setting the space for the seminar, I had all these memories coming back to me of all the time that I've spent there and all of the karmic reasons that I had for being there, which is a long tale, which is something I can tell you someday. And but I feel like we all did a lot of good work there in Rhode Island. And we even had a chapter of the Space Clearance Society there that with COVID merged into the Space Clearance Society here in California. And we did a lot of clearing of spaces that were related to the King Philip's War and the slave trade that was there. And, I have deep roots in Rhode Island and Rhode Island history. So it's really wonderful to be back with you and to be able to talk to you about depth hypnosis and the book that has just been published on depth hypnosis. And it's a book that has been 23 years in the writing. And, it was actually the first thing that I set out to do when I first started, working with people one-on-one with depth hypnosis. One of the things that happened was that my practice got really full really fast. And depth hypnosis actually emerged over the course of time as I was working to get my doctorate in transpersonal psychology. I got my certificate in hypnotherapy. And as I was working with people with the issues that you usually work with hypnotherapy with eating disorders or fear of public speaking. And I began to see, as I was working with the hypnotherapeutic tools that I'd been taught, that that there was a lot more that could be done. And interestingly enough, I'd had, at that point, I'd had 20 years of study of Buddhism and about that long of shamanism, where I had been practicing, sort of unofficially. And I started bringing those tools into the environment, into the clinical environment. And I very quickly realized that that I needed to get more people to do this modality because I couldn't see all the people who were on my waiting list. And so that I first started out, I thought, well, I'll write a book and that'll get people interested in the modality and then we can have more practitioners. But as it turns out, what was really needed was for me to start teaching depth hypnosis. And so I did, and been teaching it for over 30 years now. And but it, after, you think it wouldn't have taken, quite so long for me to get that book written, but it did. And I'm really, it's gone through a lot of different editions and a lot of different iterations. And so it is here. And maybe I might read from it a little bit this evening. But we'll see what happens, what questions you have. So I'd like to just talk a little bit about what is depth hypnosis, because I have a feeling not everyone in the webinar is from my classes when I was there. So you may not know what depth hypnosis is. So it is a very catalytic process of transformation. And it does combine Buddhism, shamanism, energy medicine, and transpersonal psychology with hypnotherapy and regression work. And it's a process where people can really go more deeply into the roots of the symptoms that they're dealing with. And in my book, I have a lot of different case studies that explain how it works, but I'd like to just talk a little bit about depth hypnosis as a model itself. Because when you engage with depth hypnosis, when you're a client, you have a different way of understanding what the model is. And then when you're a student, you have yet another way of understanding it. And then as a practitioner, even further understandings emerge from the model. So I'd like to talk about the model first from the client point of view. So when people are thinking about coming to depth hypnosis, they've often tried a lot of different things, a lot of different processes, and a lot of different, they've already done probably quite a bit of talk therapy. So the people who come to depth hypnosis are looking for something a little bit deeper to address the issues that they've been working on for some time. And so as a client, the way that it looks coming into the clinical setting is, and you can come in for depth hypnosis for, again, a wide variety of issues. People, again, from the typical things that people come for hypnotherapy for, fear of flying, habit abatement, to more esoteric things like a spiritual emergency, or perhaps, trying to understand a longstanding depression or anxiety, or physical symptoms such as chronic fatigue, or autoimmune problems that don't really respond to Western methods of curing and healing. And the reason why, from a client point of view, the reason why clients with so many issues can come to depth hypnosis and find assistance is because of I'll be talking about the way the different pillars of depth hypnosis contribute to the model: Buddhism, shamanism, energy medicine. But here I'm pointing to a Buddhist concept of Buddha nature. And because from a depth hypnosis point of view, at the heart of the person that is looking for help is that place within them that is wise, that is stable, and connected to the universal flow in an unbroken way. And in Buddhism, this is called Buddha nature. And so Buddhism really informs the depth hypnosis model from this in terms of being a psychology of wholeness, where you're really starting with understanding that at the core, each person has this wholeness within them. And the work really is to try to discover how they have twisted away from that sense of wholeness. And in fact, one of the things that I've realized over the years is that the symptoms that people come for help with are the roadmap showing you how the person has twisted away from that core sense of stability and wholeness. And it is the symptoms that are actually the teacher to help you as the counselor and the person who's dealing with the issues find the way back to their Buddha nature, or find their way back to wholeness. And so the reason that a person can come to depth hypnosis with, people can come with such a wide variety of issues is because all of those issues are simply different manifestations on a physical level, or on a mental level, or on an emotional level, or on a spiritual level of how the person has moved away or twisted away. I kind of perceive it that way from their wholeness. And so it really is just a matter of tracking back to that wholeness through the symptom as the teacher. And so in the first session, when someone comes in for help, what we do is we take an emotional biography. It's actually a short list of questions, relatively short list of questions that reveals an incredible amount about a person's experience. And then we look at the biography of the presenting problem. So we're looking at the symptoms in the context of the larger experience of the self. And one of the things that we also do in that first session is we ask the person if they've had any dreams coming into the work, because dreams are a huge part of depth hypnosis. And we really spend a lot of time listening to what the dreams might be pointing to in terms of where we might go to help alleviate the issues at hand. And I remember when in the 90s, as email was coming in, I thought I was very tricky, because I would give a lecture called Dreams, Email from the Higher Self. I just thought I was so hip. But I still think it's a really good way to describe dreams, because I really do feel like they are guidance from the higher self, where we listen very closely as practitioners to see where we might go. So in that first session, we're looking at the person's experience, and we're asking the questions, from a Buddhist point of view. Where are the places where this person is overly attached to things being a particular way? Or what are they avoiding? And what are the core beliefs that they have that may be not quite right? Like they might have some kind of misunderstanding. And here, this is, those of you that have any Buddhist training will notice that this is the Four Noble Truths that is being used as a diagnostic tool within the depth hypnosis environment. And then in shamanism, we're looking from the shamanic point of view, as we're listening to the person's emotional biography, we're looking, where are the places of power loss? Where are the places of soul loss? Where are the places where there might be a potential for energetic interference? And so an example of each one of those might be in a person's biography. If they've lived, say, with a critical parent for many years, that being exposed to any kind of negativity over time will create a place of power loss within a person. And in depth hypnosis, we adopt several different ways of working shamanically to do power retrievals to help return power to people. And with soul loss happens when a person has a traumatic event, and there's a part of themselves that might leave trying to get away from the trauma. And if you've ever seen anyone in a state of shock after an accident, you might recognize they don't feel like they're all there. And from a shamanic point of view, they aren't all there, because the part of them that could get away got away. And what can happen is that part of the self may come back, and everything may just go on as usual. But one thing that can happen in a trauma is that that part of the self that has not, that has tried to get away may not be able to find its way back. And so then you have the symptoms of soul loss, which include all of the post-traumatic stress kinds of problems. And then in terms of energetic interference, you know, you're looking at, is this person having trouble holding boundaries? Do they have big mood changes? These are all indicators that their energy sphere may be overexposed to other people's energy. So these are all the things that we're looking at as we're listening to the emotional biography and the biography of the presenting problem. So, and then, you know, we'll remark all that down. And then in the next session, what we do is we connect people with what we call a part of the self that has only their highest good as its sole intent. And this is a hypnotherapeutic process. It's the first altered state work that we do in depth hypnosis. And much of the work in depth hypnosis is done in the altered state through regression therapy, past life regression, age regression, prenatal regression, and other forms of altered state work, such as soul part exchange or energetic interference release. So, but this is the first one. And the first altered state work is designed to connect the person with that part of themselves, that, again, that has only their highest good as its sole intent, which may sound like something similar to Buddha nature. So we're connecting them with this inner guidance that acts as a anchor, as something that is a safe place to return to as we do the deeper work with the regression and other altered state work. And this part of the self can be, you know, it can be an animal, it can be a plant, it can be a person. It's however the person is perceiving this experience. It might be a light, might be a sound, might be a mythic or angelic being, but it's we help them kind of make as concrete as possible this connection with this part of the self that has only the highest good as its sole intent. And so then, and sorry? Sounded like someone said something. So then in the third session, what we do is we take a look at, okay, where are we going to go first in order to deal with the presenting issue? And then we will do some inquiry. We have a process of inquiry called insight inquiry in depth hypnosis, which is a specific way of asking questions where the question is always based on what the client has just said. And so you can go very deeply, very quickly with this method of inquiry. And so with that method of inquiry, we arrive at an emotional state that we follow in with the altered state processes of the regression work and follow the emotional experience into the energy body and then follow that experience on the energetic level to the situation or time or place where they were first or most significantly feeling that experience on the emotional level. And that's where we begin to introduce the vehicles of transformation that help the person alter their relationship to the situation or circumstance, that the underlying drivers for the symptoms that they're dealing with on the conscious mind level begin. And so we can work, you know, fairly quickly to relieve, if not completely relieve, alter the symptoms that a person's dealing with. And so as a client, a person is really trying to understand what's making them suffer and trying to relieve that suffering. And as people find some relief from their suffering, they become more interested. You know, like sometimes I joke around and, you know, I say like, I feel like I'm putting a little sign outside my office door saying, stop smoking, and, you stop smoking, ease your fear of flying. But, at those two things are the tip of an iceberg of something much larger. Any habit, any addiction, any phobia is the tip of an iceberg of something much deeper. And so, I say, okay, we're just going to deal with that, but actually what happens is once that gets relieved, once the presenting symptom gets relieved, which is usually within the first 5 to 7 sessions, the person becomes aware of how the issue is actually pointing to something deeper within them. And that's when they become a student. And they move from that place of looking at how do I relieve my own suffering to what is suffering? Like, what causes suffering? Like how do we understand what causes suffering? And then they become a student. And here at the Sacred Stream, we have many, many classes that people take as they are clients with depth hypnosis practitioners. We have about 100 depth hypnosis practitioners and a couple of thousand hypnotherapists in the counseling model of depth hypnosis that are working. So I can take a day off now, which is really wonderful because I couldn't at the beginning. So now we do have enough people meeting the demand for the model, which is like a grace, and I'm grateful for it every day. But we have all these classes that you can take that are part of the training to become a hypnotherapist or a depth hypnosis practitioner. But people often will take them as they are still doing their own personal work, just to augment the information that they're receiving. And that gives them a little bit more perspective, a little bit more understanding about what they're dealing with. We have a class called Relationships and Karma, which is a required class for the practitioner certificate. And people take that class and they realize, oh my goodness, all of these relationships that I thought were this way are actually informing me in a completely deeper and more important way. And so then they really begin to see how their relationships are what I call cauldrons of understanding. And then things begin to deepen, their perspective begins to widen. And so the experience as a student is one of discovery, similar to that of the student, as the client, but the process of discovery is accelerated a bit through the education in the classes at the Sacred Stream. And then when people are interested in becoming depth hypnosis practitioners or hypnotherapists in the spiritual counseling practice of depth hypnosis, there are 2 different levels of certificate. The practitioner is the more complete one. Then people begin to take classes in depth hypnosis. They learn how to do regression work. They learn how to do energetic interference releases. They learn, how to do soul part exchanges. They learn sort of all of the different energy medicine qualities that or supports that are informing every level of the model, from practitioner support to deepening the field of how things are happening in the clinical setting. And so from a practitioner point of view, you're looking at relieving suffering. First you're trying to understand how to relieve your own suffering as the client, then you're trying to understand what is the nature of suffering as a student. And then as a practitioner, you're able to step into knowing and having a larger understanding of what it is to help someone end their suffering, help them come out of their suffering. You have a much broader understanding about the nature of suffering drawn from Buddhist and shamanic understandings. You have a perspective from energy medicine and hypnotherapy that shows you the deeper field behind the manifestations of suffering. And you have the transpersonal psychology perspective, which again is a transpersonal psychology. It's a psychology of wholeness, where all of this information is seated in the Western therapeutic paradigm. And so you have this very robust understanding about what creates suffering, how to address suffering, how to relieve suffering, how to end suffering. And so as a practitioner, this is what you're doing all day long, which is, for me, a grace and something that I feel grateful for every day, that I can work in this way. So these are the different levels in which people can engage with depth hypnosis. And I think at this point I've been doing a lot of talking, so I'd just like to see if there's any particular questions of anything that I've said so far that you'd like me to address.
I have a question. So all the sessions, like, do you see the clients in person or online?
Both online, on the phone, in person. Yeah, you can do this work. With COVID, everyone went online, and now a lot of practitioners, I think all depth hypnosis practitioners have international practices at this point. Yeah.
And how safe it would be
Yeah.
for the client, because I honestly don't know anything about hypnosis or what happens actually on the client side when they are in hypnosis. So how safe it is for them?
Well, it's very safe indeed, because the first piece of work that you do, and we may do this work if we have time today, is to connect the person with the inner resources, that part of the self that has only their highest good as its sole intent. So they are connected energetically with this part of themselves that is protective. And you can do quite deep work. I have been surprised myself at the level of transmission that is possible on Zoom. I especially from a teaching point of view, I was very reluctant to especially take the more catalytic trainings online, the trainings in applied shamanism and depth hypnosis, in addition to the other classes such as relationships and karma, relationships and power, the initiations of the sacred feminine, these classes that are not necessarily part of a training program. But I was concerned, about being able to transmit what needs to be transmitted in order to be able to pick up these tools and work with them. And I'm pretty careful in my classes. I have grounding circles. I have senior students that hold the energetic container as I'm teaching. And, I work, with inner guidance to create a robust field for someone when we're working one-on-one. And I have been amazed at the level of transmission that is possible on Zoom and on the phone. It's remarkable.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of kind of basic questions. First of all, I was wondering, so is there, there's a protocol for the classes that you take and all of that, but do you have to have any special licensure? Is this something, and my second part of the question is this something that like insurance can cover? How do people tend to pay for this? Is this something that is accessible to lots of people, regardless of their income, that kind of thing?
Well, the foundation of the Sacred Stream is organized as a non-denominational Buddhist church. And the education to become a spiritual counselor or a depth hypnosis practitioner is considered to be part of the education of to become a minister, if you choose to become a minister at the end of the education. So it's so you're working as a spiritual counselor, which means that you're not working with any government agency or with any kind of state licensure or federal licensure. You're working as a spiritual counselor, as a minister, ultimately. And so there's no licensing or certifying body on a federal or state level that would have anything to do with the work, the same way as a divinity school wouldn't have the same. We're like a divinity school. So so there's that. And you can and people who come to depth hypnosis and decide to become spiritual counselors or depth hypnosis practitioners come from all walks of life. They may be, tech people that have, decided they want to have a change in the way that they're working, or they may be social workers that feel like they need more tools in their toolbox in order to deal with burnout, or recurring boundary issues or something like that. Or you might have people who have been out of the workforce for a long time and they decide that they really want to begin this study. So you don't have to have any particular previous education, although I always say the thing that I've noticed with my students coming into any of the work here at the Foundation of the Sacred Stream is that if they look back over the course of their life, they will see that they have been being trained in a way to do this work. Like, for instance, we have people who are parents who have spent so much time learning from their children and learning to understand how to be with another person's experience on a deep level, for instance. Or we have people who have been they've been in charge of maybe a county agency, helping members of the community through different occupational outreach programs, something like that. And they realize, well, I've been an administrator, but I've been understanding exactly what people need in order to be able to make the changes that they need to make, right? So one of the things that I always say is that whatever education you have is education that you're going to be able to work with in depth hypnosis. And then in terms of insurance payments and how do people pay for this, there are some insurance companies that do pay for hypnotherapy with a doctor's or spiritual counseling with a doctor's prescription. And so if you have a doctor's prescription, then you can work with that. And a lot of HSA programs that people have through their employers will pay for spiritual counseling services. So that's one place. Now, one thing that we always recommend to all of our practitioners is they have at least 1 or 2 low fee or no fee slots, so that people who don't have a connection to insurance and who don't have the means to pay the usual fee have a way to access the fees. And we have a list to access the services. And we have a list of practitioners who have ongoing who have openings in their practice for the low fee and no fee slots. So we try to cover, in terms of client services, we try to cover as many people's situations as possible. And at the Sacred Stream, in terms of the students and studying, we do have a scholarship program where we do grant scholarships based on need. And so we try to work with people as much as we can to help them with their educational costs. So I think that covers all your questions.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And it could be like individualized approach, but how many sessions a client, say, typically takes? Like,
It's very individual, you're right. You know, I would say within the first 5 to 7 sessions, people get a shift, at least a shift, if not a major improvement in the issue that they're dealing with. It's different for every person. Some people, you know, some people may have more resistance to the work than other people, or some people may have deeper trauma than other people, so it might take a little bit longer. But usually within the first 5 to 7 sessions, people experience a shift in their issues. And then one of the things, as I mentioned, that happens is that people begin to discover, like, this, you know, the thing that was causing me problems is actually the thing that is there to teach me more and more about myself. And so then they will begin this process of becoming a student and learning more about themselves, and continuing with their personal work in the depth hypnosis sessions. And, you know, it really becomes a, a very helpful method of spiritual inquiry. So, you know, that can go on for some time, you know. It really depends. It's very individual.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question.
Mm.
First, I've got a comment. I just wanted to say the way you put everything together is really beautiful, and it really resonates with me. When you do energy work, you know, you really start to see how so many different modalities are, there's crossover. And I think a lot of times people think you meander from one thing to another, but really there is, like a, as you say, like you're almost being trained for it, dreams, meditation, you know, religion, psychology. It's just all interwoven. But I wanted to get back to the symptoms are a roadmap to how they have twisted their nature and their way back. Could you give an example, just so I have a more concrete of how this
Sure.
would work?
Thank you for that question. Okay, so let me give you an example that I often use, which also points to the way in which symptoms can travel from the energetic level. And if they're not dealt with on the energetic or spirit level, then they'll move to a mental level. And if they're not dealt with on the mental level, they'll move to the emotional level. And then if they're not dealt with on the emotional level, they'll move to a physical level. So, and a person can come in for help with depth hypnosis, becoming aware of the problem at any one of those levels. You know, they may know I'm in a spiritual emergency, you know, okay. Or they may come in and say, you know, I just can't get out of bed. I'm just emotionally wrought. Okay, so there's a problem that has all these different layers to it, but they're aware of it at that particular level. And I'm going to give you an example of someone now who, she was a young woman. She was about 30 years old, and she came in for help with chronic fatigue. And she had been to a battery of doctors who could not find a biochemical reason for her fatigue. So she was hoping that I might be able to help her. So remember I mentioned the emotional biography, and remember that we're looking at the emotional biography, trying to understand where there might be power loss or soul loss or energetic interference, or where the attachments or the aversions, the misknowings are, right? So I'm listening to the emotional biography, and she tells me a lot of different things. But the thing that stood out to me was that as a young child, she was very much in love with the church. And she used to help the priest with the Sunday sacraments, and she would come and, you know, clean the church before the services and help clean up afterwards. And she had a really strong relationship with Jesus. And, you know, she was very ardent. You know, she was telling me this in the middle of telling me, you know, what her relationship was with her siblings, and how her relationship was with her mother and her father, you know, so this is sort of embedded in all of these questions. And then she said she said to the priest, I think she was about 10. She said one day to the priest, she said, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be a priest like you. And the priest looked down at her and laughed at her. She remembered being laughed at. He said, well, that's ridiculous because girls can't be priests. And she kind of sort of just told me that, just kind of ran right by it, you know, and then how did you feel most days in junior high? You know, like she just, like there was a thing that she just said, but I'm like, bing, 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 this is a problem, right? Power loss, soul loss, you name it, is all right there in that moment. So I had that in my mind. And so then she goes on to say, well, you know, in junior high and high school, I started having really bad social anxiety. Like it was hard for me to go to school. I didn't really want to go to school, and she had been a straight A student in grade school. And, you know, so I'm like, I'm tracking this thing. And so I'm asking her more questions. And then she said, you know, and I asked her more questions, you know, what was your first, you know, intimate relationship like, you know, these questions. And then I asked, well, you know, how did you feel most days in college or after you went to high school? And she said that in college, that she entered into a major depression and that she barely made it through school. And every exam was a nightmare, and you know, but she managed to get through college. But once she graduated from college, she came home to live with her parents because she was so depressed. And then her depression kind of became, you know, more and more physical. Then she became more and more exhausted, and she was diagnosed with chronic fatigue. And she had been, you know, at home, you know, more or less on the couch for several years before she came to see me. And so I'm looking at this and I'm seeing on a spirit level, she had this terrible affront where her relationship with the divine was interrupted in a very big way by the humiliation of the priest and by the loss of her dream about becoming a priest. It wasn't dealt with. Nobody recognized it as anything, and she didn't even think of it as anything that big. But one of the questions is, what was your relationship to God when you were young? So she was answering that question. And so, then that wasn't addressed on the spirit level. On the mental level, she started having all of this social anxiety, very anxious, you know, couldn't find herself, didn't know where she was in relationship to other people, big disruption on the mental level. And then it wasn't addressed there, and it moved into the emotional level, the depression. And so she struggled with the depression for all those years. And then it wasn't addressed effectively there at that level. And then she collapsed on the physical level. And that was when she really, I mean, she was trying to get help at the other levels in earnest, but, you know, once it became physical, you know, there was doctors, there was tests, there was all this, and there was like nowhere to go with it. But from my perspective, looking at it from a depth hypnosis perspective, the thing that we're seeing is the loss of connection with the divine, with one's Buddha nature, right? She had this ardent love for Jesus and for Mary. And it was something that was really enriching to her spirit. And that was broken by the priest's words. And then it became a mental issue where she felt anxious. She didn't know where she was in the world. So with that first hit, she starts spinning away from her connection with her wholeness and we might call it the divine within her. And then can't find her way. She's too anxious, socially, can't form relationships. It's getting lost. And then ultimately becoming very depressed emotionally, can't gather herself to, you know, enjoy life anymore, and then moving into the physical, the chronic fatigue. So from my point of view is we needed to start, and this sometimes you start at the outside, you would start with the last problem, but ultimately you always have to come to the first problem. The first problem is always the spirit problem. So so what I suggested to her, so we did this process of connecting with that part of yourself that has only your highest good as its sole intent. It came to her as Mary, and she formed a relationship with Mary again, and we began and then we did some regression work to that time where the priest had told her she couldn't be a priest, and we did soul retrievals and power retrievals and other forms of transformative work there to help shift her relationship to that loss. And then we'd had to do more regression work to the different moments of real acute social anxiety where she kind of lost herself in certain social situations, and to the places of deep depression. We had to do more regression work and some energetic interference work there. And then as we were doing that, as we were working with her spirit on tracking back through the symptoms, she started to get a little better physically, and she started having a little bit more energy. And we kept working in this way, and it was really just tracking back through all of the manifestations of this terrible sort of assault on her relationship with her wholeness, and all of the different experiences that she'd had as a result of that. And it was tracking back, doing the repair with the power retrievals, the soul retrievals, all the correcting of the misunderstandings of core beliefs, all of that. And by the end of our time working together, she had enrolled in divinity school. And, that was one of the, for me, that was just one of the most wonderful outcomes that I could have ever wanted for her. And she was back in school, and she became a priest, and that was a big deal. But I think that that case study probably answers your questions. I hope. If it doesn't, let me know.
Yes, no, that was great. If I may have just one follow-up.
Sure.
The remedies, like connecting with your high self, does that begin at the very first session, or do you do like the intake and then just decide what to do subsequent? Like, how does the sessions kind of fold into each other?
And the first session is the emotional biography questions, the checking in where the person has been emotionally over the course of their lifetime. Then also looking at the presenting problem, the biography of the presenting problem, and then looking at the dreams. That's the first session. The second session, sometimes, especially if you have an older person, that first session might take 2 or 3 sessions to get through it all because their lives are full and rich, right? And so then, but the very next session is always the connection with that part of the self that has only the highest good as its sole intent. That's always the first piece of altered state work that you do that happens after the intake, what you're calling the intake.
That was awesome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Hi, Isa.
Hi.
I'm one of the people who knew Isa when she came to Rhode Island. I did not study depth hypnosis with her, but I did know her then. I'll say one more thing about Isa. I had a session with Isa after my parents died. You may not remember this, where, how I put it, this is my words, she went into the land of the dead and conversed with my parents. And, how true or not, that's a long conversation. It was very good for me. It was very good for me, I would say that. So here's my question, Isa. When in the session where you help the person connect with the let's say their higher self, or the part of them that has their I don't know how you call it. Let me
Yes, and highest good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
what if there's like challenges in that? Can you talk about that? Because I'm sure not everyone can, like this woman that you gave could connect with Mary, but for some of us, not that anyone I'm saying it particularly, but some of us, that would be already, would not be a clear connection. Can you talk to that, please?
Well, certainly not everyone would have a clear shot to Mary, right? She had that early education, right? But first of all, it really it depends on the person. And some people do have trouble connecting the first time and even the second time, and maybe even the third time. And generally, that's a function of people's belief and their ability to be hypnotized. That can drive a person's experience. It can also be that a person might have trouble trusting that they could have this part of themselves. Or sometimes people might have difficulty shifting their perceptual capacities. We're so oriented externally with our eyes. And when you're working internally, you may not actually see anything. You may feel things, you may hear things, you may sense things. And then it takes a while for people to be able to tune their internal perceptual capacities. So that might be a reason. And, and from a depth hypnosis point of view, none of this is a problem. Because if it's a trust issue, that's something that needs to be dealt with on a larger issue in any case. And if it's a tuning issue internally, well, it's really wonderful for someone to have the opportunity to be able to have a context in which to learn and understand things from a different point of view internally, right? It's all part of the learning. And, we have different processes that we can use to help a person with the trust issues or with the perceptual issues. We can work with suggestion hypnosis to help with that. There's lots of interventions that we can work with. But one thing that I always tell my students as I'm teaching the process is that there is this part of the self within everyone. And that's something that you as the practitioner have to hold. That, like you may not get there the first time, you may not get there the second time, but you will get there. And it will be on their own terms, and it will take a form that has meaning to them. And it's not dictated by anything other than their deepest internal experience.
Isa, this
Hi,
is Ken. This is Ken.
Ken, how are you?
Hi. And just for people, I thought I would just real quick. You gave a really great example in one of your classes explaining insight inquiry and using the client's language. I think it was something like, and you use a more mundane issue, like you go to the beach and you sit under the umbrella and you watch the waves. So then when you talk to the client, you don't ask a question like, "Oh, so how was the weather?" Because the client mentioned the umbrella and the waves. So there's those like the intro ones. You can ask questions about sitting under the umbrella. Oh, what did you do while sitting under the umbrella? Or, oh, what was it like watching the waves? And so it has like a more natural flow versus just coming in with some tangent question that ostensibly makes sense, but could disconnect the client from the experience they're having. So I just wanted to offer that for folks who are new hearing this.
Thank you, Ken. I really appreciate that. Yeah, the process of insight inquiry is something that we would use actually, in those moments where people might be having a little trouble connecting with the part of themselves that has only their highest good. We would then like ask questions based on things that they say when they're in an altered state, that would lead them perhaps a little bit more seamlessly toward their inner experience because of the nature of the question, the way that you pose the questions. And it's always based on, you're always taking one step closer to their more internal experience with each question that you ask.
I think Anna has a question. Go ahead, Anna. Anna?
I think she has to unmute.
Anna, you're unmuted. It might, next to your audio on your computer, there's a little arrow, and you can click on that and sometimes connect the mic or something. That's about the best I could offer help with the Zoom. Okay.
Or she could possibly type a question into the chat.
That's what I was
Yeah.
just gonna.
If I could just ask a follow-up question
Sure.
to just that line of dialogue. Is that something that's trained? Like,
Yes.
okay, because you know, sometimes having to come up with your own ideas on the fly it can be difficult. So I was wondering how much that's trained.
The whole idea is not to come up with ideas on the fly. I can do an example of insight inquiry with you if you want me to.
Sure.
Okay, so tell me, what did you do last weekend?
Last weekend, I went to a marching band festival.
Where was the marching band festival?
It was outside in a schoolyard in Providence.
And what drew you to this festival?
Well, I like the music, and I used to be part of that community.
Have you been part of a marching band as being part of that community?
Yes.
What instrument did you play in the marching band?
I played cymbals.
And what made you decide to pick up cymbals as an instrument?
Because I played clarinet before that and nobody could ever hear me. So I decided to play the loudest instrument I could play.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Okay, so you see, that's an example of insight inquiry, right? Do you feel how it might be different from other forms of inquiry that you've had around your marching band experience?
Yeah, it feels like you're interested, first of all.
Yeah, really interested.
Like you want to go deeper, and it's not kind of a back and forth. It didn't feel disjointed. It just felt like very like you were really listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so, I mean, that's, when you're focused in that way, you just, I always ask my students, just follow your curiosity. Like that was such an interesting thing, and we went from a fall afternoon at a schoolyard into this, very deep place within you. Well, a fairly deep place within you in terms of your choices, your reasoning for your choices, So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
While you're doing the sessions, probably not the first ones like the bio questions, when you're actually doing the sessions and you have them under hypnosis, are you after recalling what was said, or is the person actually remembering everything they're saying?
So as the client, people will generally remember their experience fairly clearly because in depth hypnosis, we call it depth hypnosis not because you go deeply in trance, but it's you go deeply within the self. But in terms of the level of trance, we're always working in that place that I call the littoral zone. It's LITTORAL. That's the you in Rhode Island are well acquainted with that space. That's the space where the sand hikers run, is right where the sea meets the shore. So we're working with the contents of the unconscious mind and the organizational capacity of the conscious mind right there in depth hypnosis. So the person is pretty much aware of what's happening most of the time. And in any case, practitioners are trained to write a transcript of the whole session. So if the person doesn't remember, they can fill them in.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Anna has put her questions in. So the first one is, if there are no dreams, is there ability for hypnosis?
If there are no dreams, is there what for hypnosis?
Is there ability, like, can we go for this possibility? Like, is there any?
It's not a problem if there are no dreams. They just enhance the process. It's if a person doesn't remember their dreams, it's not the end of the world. We have a series of points that we give to people to try as they're going to sleep to focus on, and then ways of focusing their attention as they're waking up that generally helps people remember dreams. But if people are not remembering dreams, it's not the end of the world. There's plenty to work with.
And her second question is, what about curses? That is like shadow work, and like compatibility with internal family systems, or IFS.
Sure. So we do work with the curses, but we tend to, there's a whole other area of teaching that I give, which is in applied shamanic counseling. And it's in the applied shamanism classes that we study the nature of curses. There's quite a bit of work that has to come before that in order to ground people in working with curses, but it's definitely something that we can address in the depth hypnosis environment.
Okay, thank you. Linda, you had a question?
Yeah, I was actually just wondering, just to make sure I have this, like hypnosis, meditation, and shamanic journeying, are they all are similar or different?
They're all different ways of altering the state of awareness. So with meditation, you're altering the state of awareness, usually there's several different ways, by focusing on the breath and just letting all other engagements drop away and just staying focused on the breath. You can also, with meditation, you can also focus on a mantra and have that be the focus. And in that way, you get what we call the monkey mind to settle, and then you're left with the inner silence. And then from there, you can do all kinds of things with meditation, with the meditative state, depending on what level of practice you are in, or what type of Buddhism you practice. But then the shamanic journey is attained, the altered state is attained through a repetitive sound. It's usually a drum. It could be a rattle. It could be a didgeridoo in Australia, for instance. And that repetitive sound alters the state of awareness. And in that state of altered awareness, you learn how to focus your intention in order to connect with, at the beginning with the shamanic journey, the first set of processes are to connect with a spirit in the form of nature. It's a teacher in the form of nature. And it could be an animal or a plant or a person. And then you establish a relationship with that being, and then you can ask questions and work with them. And when shamanic practitioners are working, they're working mainly as a channel for the guides that they have established relationship with through the shamanic journey. So there's a lot you can do in the altered state of awareness of the journey as well. A lot of places you can explore. And then with hypnosis, it's again, you attain the altered state, but this time you do it through the experience of suggestions for relaxation. In depth hypnosis, practitioners are trained to work with energy to help bring, you know, a deeper field of energy for the person to be able to focus on while they're doing the suggestions for relaxation. And that helps the person alter their state of awareness and to begin to go more deeply into their personal experience. And then, of course, dreams are another form of altered state experience that we work with that is probably the one that's most well known to people in terms of their, you know, their focus, the way that they focus your experience inward through the dream time. So they're all, you know, one thing, you know, when I teach the shamanic journey class, I always, you know, I try to set up what I call a badminton game between the dream time and the shamanic journey. And what I always say is dreams and the shamanic journey are like two islands in the same sea. But I would say that about meditation and hypnosis as well. I would say they're all islands in the same sea, right? They just have different access points.
Any other questions?
I guess I have one more. This will be my last.
Doesn't matter. Thank you for the questions.
Yeah, can we get the book on Amazon, or is it out yet? Please tell us.
Yes, you can order. Let me just check. It's not quite ready to order on Amazon, but it will be any day now. If you'd like to order a copy, you can order it at sacredstream.org in the store. And Amazon probably will not carry it until about November 10th. But if you'd like one sooner, you can do at least a pre-order right now, and we can get the book to you. But for sure on November 10th or right around there, you should be able to order right directly from Amazon if you want to. But if you want me to, possibly sooner, but if you want me to sign it for you, I will. And you can order it through sacredstream.org.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if it is appropriate to ask, but as we are an organization, a nonprofit organization of healing, like healers, so would you like to offer any discount for that for our members?
I don't know how to do that. I imagine that's something that we could talk to. I have to talk to our tech people. But if we can do that, maybe what we can do is send out a message to everyone.
Sure.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, I thought we might do a little hypnosis together if you'd like. Or we can end here. Okay, good. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that process that I've been talking about, that process of connecting with that part of the self that has only your highest good as its sole intent. So, so just let yourself get comfortable. And just allowing yourself to begin to feel the surface under you. Noticing all the places where it meets the different parts of your body. And as you do, just noticing where your breath is. Noticing as you breathe in where your breath goes. And noticing as you breathe out where your breath goes. And just becoming aware of the way in which your breath is almost like a bridge between your outer world and your inner world. And just allowing yourself with each breath to draw a bit closer into your inner world, into that place where everything that you've ever known or felt or sensed or dreamed or imagined is recorded. And just knowing that we're taking a journey into this place here today to connect with a part of yourself that has only your highest good as its sole intent, which you may encounter in any form that has meaning to you, perhaps as a light or a sound, or a mythic or angelic being, or even a plant or person or animal, and which you may also perceive through any of your senses. You may see it internally or feel it or hear it, even smell this part of yourself. But for now, just allowing yourself now to return to your breath. And as you do, just allowing yourself to sense or feel or imagine that there's a sense of relaxation all around you. And that as you breathe, you can draw that sense of relaxation in with your in-breath. Just bringing your breath up into your head and face. Just feeling the muscles around your eyes and jaw, letting go of any tension they might be carrying. And feeling that same relaxation flowing down into your neck and throat, down into your shoulders and arms and hands. And just allowing yourself on your next breath to feel that same relaxation filling your lungs. Just noticing how your heart feels as that relaxation flows throughout your chest, down into your belly, bathing all your organs of digestion and elimination and reproduction in a soothing bath of relaxing energy. And just feeling that relaxation flowing down through your hips, down to your legs, down to your knees, your ankles, all the way down to your feet. And on your next breath, I'm wondering if you can sense or feel or imagine that that relaxation is creating a star or sun at the base of your skull. And I'm wondering if you can sense or feel or imagine it radiating throughout your mind, harmonizing your brain waves. And just noticing that as your mind relaxes, your body feels even more relaxed. And as your body relaxes, your mind feels even more relaxed. And just noticing the connection between your mind and your body as you allow that relaxation to flow down your spine, vertebra by vertebra, relaxing all the nerves and muscles in your back, flowing all the way down to the base of your spine, down through your bottom, and again down the back of your legs, all the way down to your feet again. And I'm wondering if it's possible that you might feel that you're so filled with this relaxation that it's actually coming out of the pores of your skin and surrounding you in a cocoon or cloud of soothing, relaxing energy. And as you feel supported in this way, I'm wondering if you can sense or feel or imagine that there's a staircase here before you. And just allowing yourself to know that as I count from 10 to 1, that you can travel along this staircase, knowing that when we reach 1, that you'll be in the presence or very close to being in the presence of this part of yourself that has only your highest good as its sole intent, which you may experience through any of your inner senses or and in any form that has meaning to you, perhaps a light or a sound or a mythic or angelic being or a plant or an animal or a person. So just allowing yourself now, 10, to find your feet on the stair, noticing what the stair is made of, if it's made of wood or stone or some other material. 9, feeling your hand on something like a guardrail. And 8, knowing that you have complete control over this process. 7, knowing that you can come back to the surface at any time. But 6, knowing that you really do want to connect with this part of yourself that has only your highest good as its sole intent, and which you may experience through any of your senses in any form that has meaning to you. 5, letting all of your inner senses open quite widely now. Your inner sense of taste, touch, and smell. Your inner sense of sight and hearing. But especially that 6th sense of just knowing. Allowing them all to open quite widely. 4, as you focus now on a place perhaps in nature where you have felt comfortable and at peace. 3, letting your conscious mind with any doubts or fears to simply rest as you focused even more intently on this place, perhaps in nature, where you have felt comfortable and at peace. And 2, just allowing yourself to know that you can trust the impressions that you're receiving as you focus even more intently on this place, perhaps in nature, where you have felt comfortable and at peace. And 1, just allowing yourself now as you get to the end of the stair to step out into this place perhaps in nature, where you have felt comfortable and at peace. And as you do, just taking a deep breath and noticing the particular odor of this place and letting that smell bring you into even deeper contact with it. Noticing the quality of the light, listening for any sounds, and noticing if the air is still or if there's a breeze on your cheek. And as you're here in this place, perhaps in nature, I'm wondering if you notice perhaps a path, a very inviting path, leading you more deeply into this place or around this place. I'm going to count now from 1 to 4. And as I do, just allowing yourself to move along this path, knowing that when we reach 4, that you'll be in the presence or very close to being in the presence of this part of yourself that has only your highest good as its sole intent. 1, just noticing what the path is made of, if it's made of dirt or sand or some other material. 2, knowing again that you can trust the impressions that you're receiving. 3, allowing all of your inner senses to open quite fully now. As you 4, find yourself in the presence or very close to being in the presence of this part of yourself that has only your highest good as its sole intent, and which may be taking any form that has meaning to you. And as you become aware of this part of yourself here through any of your senses, just bringing all of your senses to that place where your awareness is drawn, and asking this question: would you be willing to guide me and protect me in my life? Would you be willing to guide me and protect me in my life? Knowing that you may receive this answer in a variety of ways, perhaps as a change in the environment or an action on the part of this part of yourself, or perhaps as a telepathic or verbal message, or perhaps just a knowing. Would you be willing to guide me and protect me in my life? And if the answer is yes to this question, just allowing yourself to rest here, perceiving the nature of this guide who has come to connect with you, this part of yourself that has only your highest good as its sole intent. Noticing its the quality of its power, its nature, its personality. And if the answer is not clear or a negative, no worries, you'll have another chance to do this process again. But for now, just allowing yourself now, if you have connected with the guide, to come back gently, and or if you haven't connected with the guide, to come back gently as I count from 1 to 10. And just allowing yourself to know that when we reach 10, that we'll be back at the surface and you'll be remembering everything. 1, feeling your connection with the guide on every level of your being. 2, physically. 3, mentally. 4, emotionally. 5, spiritually. 6, feeling this connection quite strongly and knowing that you can return along this same path anytime. 7, and just feeling the surface under you now. 8, you may want to stretch a bit. 9, as you come closer to the surface. And whenever you're ready, 10, just opening your eyes and you'll be back in the room, remembering everything. Just taking a moment to review your experience. If you have a notepad or a tablet, you might want to write your experience down. Anyone have any thoughts or comments or questions about that experience?
I'll share. So I haven't really experienced, I think I've done maybe one hypnosis session, but I think my mind was very active during it. So, but I did see an image, and I felt almost like sadness at this feeling of like being cared for in that way by the guide, like so unconditionally, that my spirit maybe hasn't felt that in this life. And then I felt very connected to it. And so I wasn't expecting, I didn't know what I was going to see, but I did see an animal. So I think what I'll do is just pull up a picture online that resembles what I saw and put it on my wall, so that when I wake up in the morning, I can be reminded that there's this, I know it's not separate from me, but just as a reminder that within me, there's this being that loves me unconditionally and is supporting me.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a wonderful idea to put a picture on your wall. And you can also, I think there's a recording of this that would be available for you. You can also listen to the hypnosis part again to connect. I would recommend connecting with the guide on a regular basis as well in hypnosis, and just, you know, letting yourself be with the guide and learning more about its nature. There's also this same process is on the Sacred Stream website, as it's called Finding Your Spirit Guide. It's a download in the store if you felt like you wanted to have that to help you. But you may be able to remember the way just by just remembering the process and connecting with the guide that way. You may not need the external script. So.
I'm really grateful for this tonight. Thank you so much. It's coming at a really interesting time too. So I really appreciate you guiding us.
You're so welcome. Okay. Any other question or comment? Okay, so you can see the power of the process, the potential power of the process, and really, I'm so glad that you had that experience, and I hope others had a similar kind of experience. And you know, it is, you know, I have to say, as a practitioner and as a teacher, it's always an honor to be able to work with people in this way, and I so appreciate you listening and allowing me to offer you this process. And if you have any further questions or want more information, sacredstream.org is a good place to go. And there's lots of information. We have lots of things happening at the Sacred Stream this fall. And not the least of which is the book launch on November 10th. And that's live streaming and at the beautiful Sacred Stream Center, which is a Lutheran church, an old Lutheran church in Berkeley, California. And there's lots of classes. So women's retreat coming up on the 9th. There's just of November. There's lots and lots to explore at the Sacred Stream. And I look forward to being in circle with you again soon. And I want to thank the Rhode Island Holistic Healers Association for inviting me. You know, as I say, when I used to come to Rhode Island, I would often come to your events and, you know, participate. It's so nice to be back in touch with you. And I so appreciate all that you do. I know, you know, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I was, you know, the holistic world was not as open as it is now. And the Holistic Healers Association in Rhode Island was really fundamental in holding down the alternative viewpoint, and sometimes sometimes a less than welcoming environment. And I always appreciated that pioneering work that you've done, and all the work that you do now. So thank you so much, and thank you for having me. And
Thank you so much. Yeah. It was a great pleasure to have you. Yeah.
thank you.
I have one question about like being a practitioner. Like maybe if can you share the link how to be a practitioner and like how the course looks like?
Sure. Actually, let me ask someone to put that in the chat right now.
Mhm.
Laura, could you put the practitioner link in the chat? We're going to put some links here to the Sacred Stream site, to the page, How to Become a Depth Hypnosis Practitioner. And as I mentioned, there's 2 different levels of certification, or certificates, I should say, certificates. One is the spiritual counselor in depth hypnosis, and the other is the depth hypnosis practitioner. And as a depth hypnosis practitioner, you become part of our referral network. We have another website called Association of Depth Hypnosis Practitioners.org. And there, all of the people who have gone through the full training and who are in good standing have their profiles and there. And if you're interested in working with a depth hypnosis practitioner, I think, Ken, you're almost a practitioner, right? You're a spiritual counselor in depth hypnosis. And there are other profiles there that you can see if there's someone that you might want to work with. I do see people individually for what I call mapping sessions. And then what that is I like to meet with people who may have an issue that they have been working with or trying to understand for some time. And then we'll meet together, and then I'll offer some perspective or places to go or the next steps that might be helpful to you. And people tend to find those mapping sessions really helpful, and they can often take those next steps into their own, their own therapy practice or on their own depth hypnosis practice, and explore them further. And if you're interested in a one-on-one session with me, you can check with Sherry at sacredstream.org. Maybe you can put that in the chat too. Sherry at sacredstream.org if you want a mapping session with me, or even info at Sacred Stream. That'll come. Yeah, and I think that information is there in the chat. Thank you so much, Laura, for doing that. Laura just happened to be walking by. So she's been on call, she's been listening. So yeah, there's a class that I really recommend taking called the Shamanic Journey class. It's a prerequisite for any of the depth hypnosis work. And it's a class where you connect again with guides in the form of nature and begin the applied shamanic work of working with the guide to understand deeper aspects of yourself through the journey. And the whole applied shamanism department of the Foundation of the Sacred Stream is very extensive. And applied shamanism is a little bit different than traditional shamanic practice in that we are adapting many of the practices that are common to many shamanic traditions, and we are applying them to the issues that modern people have, which are a little bit different than people living in a more traditional setting where the earth is not buckling under the war that's been waged against it for so long, and where people are not struggling with the sense of disconnection from the earth that so many modern people have. So there's the shamanic journey is the first step that you would want to take for the depth hypnosis class. classes, all the depth hypnosis program, but it's also for the applied shamanism program. And there's you can take that class on demand, and you can also take it live streaming. I offer it several times a year in person and live streaming. And the hybrid form, there's actually 3 ways to take the class: on demand, the live stream, the full class, and then the hybrid, where when the hybrid class is coming up very soon in November, where you watch a set of videos and then we have 2 Q&As, and you watch one set of videos and you have a Q&A with me for an hour and a half, and then you watch another set of videos and you have another Q&A with me for another hour and a half. It's a kind of nice hybrid way of taking the class. This partially on your own time and partially connecting with me and letting me assist you if I can with your questions. Oh, yeah, Laura's mentioning, if you'd like to subscribe to the newsletter, you can go to the sacredstream.org website and subscribe, and you get a free download. So, and then you receive our newsletters on a regular basis to keep you updated about what kinds of programs we have and what our offerings are. And also for the discounts, that would be a good place to find discounts.
Great.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I am actually copy pasting all the links to my
Thank you.
resources. Yeah. So
Thank
that I
you.
can put everything along with the recording link.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. Any questions, or we are good to wrap up now? Okay. So thank you so much, Isa, for like accepting our invitation and being here and guiding us about the depth hypnosis today. It was a great session. I feel so much connected because homeopathy can also go into like deeper and deeper and deeper,
Yes.
find out the root cause. But most of the time, like it's a limited time frame. People don't reach up to that level, and most of the time, maybe like I'm not sure, but they are not ready to go into that deeper level, what I feel. So I personally felt this session as a like additional tool for me to go into deeper and help the clients reach out and get them healed.
That's homeopathy is such a great adjunct with depth hypnosis.
Mhm.
Thank you so
So
much for your work in the world.
thank you so much. So again, thank you so much for being here and guiding us, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Blessings,
everyone for
everyone.
joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're so
Thank
welcome.
you.